Good afternoon to you if you're just joining us. This is Shelagh Fogarty on LBC. Let me just remind you that you can still call about organ donation. Thank you very much so far for all of the really thoughtful calls that we've had on this. 0345 6060 973. Whether organ donation should be mandatory, that you opt out of it rather than the situation we have at the moment where you opt into it. You can text 84850 or tweet at LBC, and you can use exactly the same numbers if you want to speak to, text or tweet about my next guest, Syed Kamall, Conservative MEP for London East and London Mayoral hopeful. Good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon. Thanks for having me on.
People can watch this and listen to this at live streaming on lbc.co.uk as well, and we'll put it up on the website later too for another option to listen to it if people want to. You are very welcome. I want to start, if I may, by asking you about a news story that's just probably going to dominate the news today, which is that speech that David Cameron has given on tackling extremism. What he said on integration was interesting, that there has been clearly in part, a failure of integration. Do you accept that? Do you agree with him?
Well, I haven't seen the full details of his speech, but I know some of the issues he's trying to tackle, and particularly how we tackle extremism. And I think the thing we've got to remember about extremism is that there's not going to be one silver bullet. Now, I've been thinking about this for a number of years. I mean, I am a Muslim myself. I've gone to different mosques over the years, and also I was in Mumbai, so I could possibly have lost my life to terrorists. So I've seen it from different perspectives. And I think what we've got to be clear about is that there are different issues for different people, but there are lots of vulnerable young people out there who are clearly being captured or caught up in this, and they are being given this sort of exciting alternative in their mind to what they live at the moment. And also they're being promised all sorts of things like a shortcut to paradise. It's so difficult to live in a decadent West. You've got identity problems. You're not sure what you are. You're not welcome in this country. Muslims are being killed. All that's being thrown into the mix, and it's making young, vulnerable people, it's becoming quite attractive to them.
Can I ask you just to respond, if you would, to a tweet that came in an hour ago while I was discussing this with other guests. And it's from Al Irafa. I hope I've got your name correct, Al. And it says, I am well integrated. I have a degree, a good job. I celebrate Christmas with my neighbours. But I fear I will be seen as an extremist under this new culture. I hold the grievances that David Cameron talked of. I believe in a caliphate. He doesn't believe in Islamic State, but believes in a caliphate, which, if people aren't familiar with it, you tell me your interpretation of caliphate, because there are different interpretations.
There are different interpretations, but after the Prophet Muhammad, there were caliphs, the leadership of the whole Muslim community around the world, and there is this dream from some people who thinks that you can build one Muslim community around the world with one caliph. And the issue with that actually is Muslims are very different to each other. It's not like 570 or 611 AD. We are now in the 21st century, and Muslims, I have far more in common with non-Muslims in London than I do with Muslims in other parts of the world. I think we've got to recognise that. I think that's a distant
So you
dream.
think a caliphate is nonsense is a pejorative word, but you don't think it's for now. It's for the world now.
I personally, and actually, the great thing about Islam is that Islam is a religion between the individual and God. There is no sort of big hierarchy. And for me, my personal perspective is I don't think it's relevant to today. And
just to finish what Al says, and I'd love to speak to Al if I could at some point. He says, I hold the grievances David Cameron talked of, but I do believe in a caliphate. But my grievances must not be seen automatically as being on the road to terrorism. He makes an important point, doesn't he?
He does, and we get this on lots of issues. I know a few years ago I was dealing with the Danish cartoon issue, and I said that I was offended by some of the cartoons. I mean, one or two of them I found funny, a lot of them I found offensive, but people have a right to offend. It's where you draw that line, and for me, where you draw that line is if you're invoking violence, then I think you've gone too far, or if you're engage in acts of violence. But we have to believe in freedom of speech, and freedom of speech means listen to things that you may not agree with.
Were you uncomfortable at the tail end of last week at the way that Tim Farron, the new Liberal Democrat leader, was questioned about his faith, or do you expect similar things if you become either during your candidacy or if you become Mayor of London?
I think faith is a personal thing, and you will be asked questions, and sometimes there are difficult issues. But
yours is important to you as his was important to you.
For me, it's part of me. It gives me a moral framework. I'm not saying that people without faith don't have moral frameworks. We have,
but it's very much in your fabric of your identity.
It's very much me. But for me, also, I very much take an approach: live and let live. I don't want to impose my own beliefs on other people, and that's the way I see things.
And on the question of tackling extremism, and I will leave it at this point. On the question of tackling extremism and fostering greater integration, how big a priority will that be in your candidacy?
Well, I think there are lots and lots of issues that people want to talk about. They will say to me, housing's the most important, transport's the most important, environment's the most important. But actually, one of the things that I've spent a lot of time doing as the MEP for London is supporting community projects. And sometimes I think the solutions to lots of the problems we face are actually to be found in our own communities, not in Whitehall or City Hall. We're in Brussels. And I know that there are projects in London, in local areas, that are tackling these problems. And I think we've got to encourage those projects and maybe let other people in other areas learn from those projects.
Now, the bookies and plenty of other people besides say that Zach Goldsmith is the Conservative shoe-in candidate for this mayoralty, but that you are the one other Conservative candidate in the mix that can give him a good run for his money. Are you really going for the deputy mayor?
No, not at all. No, I'm going to win this. And actually, you look at other opinion polls in the past, look at general election opinion polls. You look at when David Cameron stood for
We don't want to look at those anymore. We were so disastrously wrong, weren't we?
But you look at when David Cameron went for the leadership of the Conservative Party, when he became leader, the opinion polls had him in 4th place. By the time the elections came, he actually won. And I think there's a long way to go in this election. I can win it.
You've said that you think, because of your background from an ordinary working family and the Muslim faith, you've talked about your experience in this country as the child of immigrants. You've said that you think that first-time Tory voters will come to you. Why?
What's really interesting is that and people say to me all the time, I did a few iftars during Ramadan, and I did a few multi-faith meetings during Ramadan. And what was interesting, people said to me, God, you know what I expect from a Tory? You're completely different. I didn't realise that there were people like you in the Conservative Party.
Did they say what they expected?
And to me, that's unusual. Well, they do. They say to me they expect someone like David Cameron or someone like George Osborne.
White and privileged.
Well, that's what they'd expect. And I just think, well, actually, the party's full of people like me from different backgrounds. One of my best mates is an MP in Yorkshire, and he's the son of a Welsh docker. There are lots and lots of kids grown-ups now from working class backgrounds, ordinary backgrounds, and actually we've lived that sort of tale of ambition and aspiration.
We're talking after 3 actually about Labour's relationship with welfare and with work, and again, when you think about your family's working background, do you think there's a slight confusion at the moment in the centre of British politics around who's the party for workers, who's the party for those most in need of welfare, and why can't you be both? Not you individually. Why can't a party be both?
I think it's a really interesting debate to be had around welfare. I mean, if you look at the change in demographics...
It's not a bad thing, is it, welfare? In and of itself, it's not a bad thing. It's a good thing.
No, I think, any society, we have to help those less fortunate than ourselves. And sometimes there are people who fall into difficult times through no fault of their own. I think the problem what's happened when it comes to welfare, it's become now too associated with the state. We have a great history in this country of...
But hang on. But that's why it's called the welfare state.
Yeah, but we've got a great history in this country of non-state welfare, which is kind of neglected over years. I mean, I work with lots of projects. I work with a project that helps ex-gang members, ex-drug dealers. I work with a project that helps ex-offenders. I work with a project that helps keep people into jobs. And when I say to them, what can I as a politician do? They say, stop, we don't want your money. We want you, for example, to introduce us to new customers for our business. We want you to give us some second-hand computers to help us put more people in jobs. We want you to introduce us to new employers.
I understand what you're saying, but and those charitable, for the sake of a better way of describing them, those third sector elements have always been there, but they can't fully replace or be instead of a welfare state, can they, for those who are most in need?
Oh, not at all, no. I mean, the welfare state has to be there to help those who fall off the edge of society through no fault of their own, but also for people, for example, where there are no local projects.
But hang on, so you have to be on the point of falling off the edge of society before you get welfare. Is that the plan? Well, because at the moment, with the tax credit vote today in Parliament, that there's a feeling abroad that actually these welfare cuts are being too enthusiastic, and they are affecting people. They're affecting families who need that help now. They might not be about to fall off the edge of a cliff, but they need that help now to thrive. It's as simple as that. They might not need it forever, but they need it now with young children. There's a sense abroad that actually that's being lost.
Yeah, and actually, I think you make a fair point where you say it's not. I think that's a bit stark about people falling off the edge of society, if you like. And it gives the wrong impression. But it's when people need it. Sometimes when people need that money the most, sometimes there are local charity projects that can help them, but sometimes actually it is a state. For some people, they have no alternative to the welfare state, and we have to acknowledge that. What's happened, though, sometimes, is that the state has sometimes become the first resort rather than the last resort.
Are we losing the creativity of those kind of groups that you talk about?
I mean, I meet projects that feel that they're squeezed out by the state.
Yeah. OK, well, we'll talk more about that, and we'll take calls as well. I know you're happy to take calls. Thank you for that. 0345 6060 So 973 is the number to call. You can text 84850 and tweet at LBC. Syed Kamall, Conservative MEP for London East, and is London Mayoral hopeful as well. Any questions that you have for Syed? I'm going to talk to you in a few minutes about airport expansion. We'll talk about air quality, because there was an interesting and quite worrying report out the other day about air quality. Had you had prior sight of that, or were you as alarmed as the rest of us when we saw those figures?
I was as alarmed as everyone else, but I know we're all worried about particularly, from diesel emissions and all that, yes.
And you'll be looking at that in detail. Thanks very much indeed. Thank you for coming so far, and we'll carry on this conversation in the next 10-15 minutes as well, with calls coming through from listeners as well. Lots of people still ringing in as well about our conversation on organ donation. There's a report out today. It's a call to arms, really, from the NHS and the likes of the British Heart Foundation and charities that deal with kidney disease as well. Do you think that a mandatory system of organ donation is what we should be heading towards, rather than the current opting in system that we have? 0345 6060 973. You can text 84850 or tweet at LBC. It's very nearly 2:45.
Shelagh Fogarty on LBC.
From 3, I'm going to be talking about the Labour Party's relationship with welfare and with work. The 4 candidates for Labour leader are going head-to-head this Wednesday evening from 7. Liz Kendall, Yvette Cooper, Andy Burnham and Jeremy Corbyn will scare off. They might I hope they don't scare anybody off. They'll square off in the 90-minute debate. It's going to be hosted by Ian Dale. To take part, you can go to lbc.co.uk and submit your question now. That's the LBC Labour Leadership Debate, live next week, Wednesday evening from 7 on LBC. I'm joined in the studio by Syed Kamall, who's a Conservative MEP for London and London Mayoral hopeful. Sorry, I wrongly said London East earlier on, but London MEP and London Mayoral hopeful. We have a call, actually, from Gary. Let's take that call. Gary, hi.
Hi, Sheila. How you doing?
Very well, thanks.
Hello,
fire away.
Syed, I wonder what your opinion was, or your views were, on gay sex and gay marriage.
Well, there we are. Look, I believe very much in live and let live, and so it's not. I don't judge people. I've got lots of gay friends, and I don't really think it's an issue, to be honest.
Oh, good. Same here, mate.
Right.
Same here, mate. Good. You happy with that, Gary?
Yeah.
Okay.
Good luck to him.
Good. Thank you very much
Thank
indeed.
you.
I mentioned the Labour leadership debates. It's not good, is it, for a government to have an opposition in disarray, or is it?
No, I think democracy, or a healthy democracy, needs a strong opposition. I think you need government to be held to account as much as possible, because actually when government's in power too long, you can get complacent. And so I would welcome a healthy Labour opposition. Do
you have a sense of who might win, or who you think?
I'm not sure.
You don't have a vote, clearly.
I don't have. Well, actually, I could register and vote for Corbyn, as many Conservatives are doing. But
that's a bit cynical, isn't it?
No, it's cynical, and I don't think it's really in the spirit of things. Look, I think probably the one that scares me the most, or I don't scares, but actually could challenge the Conservatives the most, I think, would be Liz Kendall, because she would move the party onto the ground that Blair moved it onto. But I know, speaking to a lot of my Labour friends, that they are far more favourable towards other candidates. And there are people saying that George Osborne, with some of his policies, clearly not all, is trying to move into that ground himself while Labour battles it out, I suppose. Can I ask you about, again, another news story that was that emerged overnight, really, over the weekend and today? The drive by the Metropolitan Police for more bilingual recruits. Do you think that's an essential part of the future of London policing? Well, I'm not sure if it's essential, but clearly, there are, I think there's something like 300 languages in London at the moment. And how do we resolve issues where clearly language is a problem? And there are lots of people in London who don't speak English, and I think that's quite sad. And first of all, I think one level we've got to work out how do we get more people to speak English when they come here. It helps them and helps them to integrate. I've been talking to people about how we can offer more free English classes to people to help them integrate. But clearly, where there's an area, the police need some help. Now, is that dedicated bilingual police? Frankly, if you're recruiting from London, you probably will get bilingual police anyway. Well, that was the point I was going to come on to, that actually you would think that the best way to do it is to reach out to the young Poles who might want to become police officers, the young Bangladeshis who might want to become police officers. Do it that way. Exactly. Rather than say, right, we need a particular drive for this, this and this. I think it would be really interesting, actually, if they met just at an audit of the people who are police officers and see what languages they have. I'm pretty sure they'd be pleasantly surprised. We mentioned airport expansion earlier on, or said that we discussed it. Where do you stand on this? I am someone who thinks that we should be ambitious. I think London's been here before. We used to have an airport called Croydon, and we made a choice in the 40s whether we knock it down, or expand or build a completely new one, and we built Heathrow. I think we're in that position again. I think Heathrow third runway is a sticking plaster. How long will it be before Heathrow third runway is full? And every time Heathrow expands, they say no more. I remember when they opened Terminal 4. And they said, no more expansion. Then they opened Terminal 5. No more expansion, they said. And now they talk about Terminal 3. And what's even worse about saying, runway 3, is saying, well, actually, we're not going to have a runway 4. So it's almost admitting that it's a stopgap solution. When China are going to be building 40 new airports before 2020, when India are building all sorts of new airports, other countries are building airports, we've got people in London who want to travel all around the world, either for business or for leisure. And there's nothing wrong with leisure or visiting family members. I think we need to be visionary and build a new airport.
Okay, thank you. John in Dagenham. Hi, John.
Hello, Sheila. Yeah, I would just like, I spoke to you about 6 months ago, but I was going to say this multiculturalism isn't working. It's not working because they don't mix in. It's absolutely true. I mean, how can you speak to somebody when they've got a veil on, like, the thing? I was on a bus the other week, and the person who stood next to, I couldn't even see her face. So how can you have a conversation with her?
What question do you want to ask John specifically, though?
Well, the question I want to ask is, what is David Cameron going to do about it to protect us? What do you think he should do?
In terms of protecting you, I mean, look, I think I actually personally think, and I'm sorry, I hear what you're saying, but I'm sorry to disagree with you. But actually, I like the diversity of London. I like the fact that we've got people from all around the world. For centuries, we've attracted people from all around the world. And on the whole, we get on. But where there are problems and where there isn't integration, I think we have to go into look at those communities and look at the specific problems. Why are people not integrated in those communities? Is it because of language problems? Is it because of lack of opportunity? Is it because actually the community themselves are isolating their own people from everyone else? But I don't like this idea to say that actually the diversity of London is not a great thing. People all around the world love our city, and I think it's a fantastic thing.
Respond to that, John.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, Sheila, I'm Scottish. I mean, I left Scotland 50 years ago, But I think the Scottish are, obviously the Irish as well, but the Scottish and the Irish are the most friendly people you'll ever get. But we mix in with people, I mean, I speak to everybody and say hello and what have you. But you go on a bus now, you go on the train, and people will they just don't seem to have that sort of spark, to.
But can I ask you, John? Can I ask you, John, the same question I asked Alfie in Tower Hamlets earlier on? Are you friendly to the people you call them? Are they friendly to you?
I'm always friendly. I worked in 2 hospitals and I work with Muslims, and they're absolutely delightful. My surgeon, Mr. Ali, comes from Egypt. He's a Muslim, and he's one of the nicest people we could ever meet. I mean, I've worked with lots of them. But I'm just talking about generally when you're out, and they don't really... They don't come over as friendly enough.
Okay, thanks, John. Can I ask you about that issue of whether parts of the Muslim community, clearly you don't fall into this part because you clearly do reach out. You've gone for public office. You're a communicator. It's as clear as the nose on my face that you're a communicator. But we get calls often. We've had several today during the conversation about David Cameron's speech. People saying my Muslim neighbours don't mix. They look inward, and the more of them that live in this area that operating like that, the more my home is changing in a way I don't like. I mean, I've asked each person who says that, what do you do? Do you reach out? But what your response to that, those communities that would shut down a little?
Well, I saw a really fascinating documentary about, I think it was either Bolton or Blackburn. It was part of Northwest England, where they interviewed people from sort of,
Good job you're not standing there.
Yeah, no, the sort of white community and the local people from the local, I think it was a Pakistani Muslim community, and they were both saying, oh, they don't talk to us. And actually, what had happened, they started a project where they made an effort just to talk to each other. They organised an event at the mosque, opened it up. And I think sometimes, it's interesting what John was saying. He was saying, I've got lots of Muslim friends, I've spoken to Muslim people, but it's everyone else. And I think we've got to get it away from being everyone else and actually saying, well, hold on a minute, my Muslim neighbours are great, or my neighbours from Poland are great. Where I live, I've got English white neighbours, I've got Bulgarian neighbours, I've got West Indian neighbours, and we just all get on. And I think what's got to happen is that you've got to make the effort, go knock on the door, go and say hello.
For those Muslims that don't want to do that, because you don't have to, whatever community you're from, you can be a private citizen who just wants to remain that way, and you might not be a great mixer, you might be shy, whatever reasons. People are allowed not to bother doing that. That's the kind of thing I would do. It's the kind of thing you would do. But is there a problem specifically within the Muslim community, do you think, which can only be made worse if people start to sort of be suspicious of one another? That would be a disaster for us all, wouldn't it, if we were increasingly suspicious of one another? Where does the responsibility lie? Do you think it just lies with all of us to reach out as much as we possibly can? Yeah,
I think it lies with all of us. I think there will be areas where there might be, I heard someone say to me the other day, we've got a bunch of Poles in our town and they don't reach out to us. I thought, well, have you spoken to them? I remember when I was growing up, they were the grumpy old man or the grumpy old woman who wouldn't speak to anyone. They said, oh, they were anti-immigrants. And someone said to me, well, actually, have you ever knocked on their door? And I think we've all got a responsibility. Look, anywhere in life, there will be people who don't want to mix and don't want to integrate, but I don't think we should generalise.
And listen, in the spirit of all these leadership debates, and you're going to be doing hustings where I'm sure you'll get the same opportunity as well. Just summarise why you for London Mayor when everybody says there's a certain Mr. Goldsmith who's a shoe-in.
Well, I can win this. I can reach out beyond the party. Lots of people have said to me, both party members, non-party members, that side, you're not your stereotypical Tory, but also I've lived London. I know what it's like to save for my deposit on my house. I know what it's like to pay more than half my income on rent. I know what it's like to travel on the underground and wait for that train to go past and wait for another train. I know what it's like. I know what it's like to be a Londoner, and I think it's what we need here is someone who can reach out way beyond the party, but actually understands the issues facing Londoners.
And why conservatism? Why the Conservatives?
Oh, because my father came to Britain in the 1950s, worked on the buses and worked on the railways, and he used to say to me, there's no limit to what you can achieve if you believe in yourself and work hard. And what was interesting was when I was looking at my politics in the 80s and asking all the different parties, the Labour Party, actually I found quite patronising. They said to me, oh, well, you should vote for us because we look after people like you. I thought, what does that mean? And that was clearly a reference to
someone actually say that to
you?
Yeah,
they did say it to me. I actually got told off by a Labour activist for being a Tory when I was a Tory. He said, people in your colour shouldn't be Tories. And that sort of almost reverse racism in some ways. And I looked at the Tory party in the 80s. Margaret Thatcher was a daughter of a grocer. My local MP was the son of a bricklayer. Cecil Parkinson was the son of a railwayman. They personified what my parents told me.
Thank you very much indeed, Syed Kamall, for coming in and talking to us today. Conservative MEP, London Mayoral hopeful. You can listen to this again online, lbc.co.uk. Many thanks.
Well, it's news to me. I mean, I am. Look, I read the same reports that you read, but I don't have any kind of special status in this campaign. As you know, it's a very, very strong field. There are at least 7 people. I think it is actually 7 people. All of